In this session, we are going to focus on turning day-to-day tasks into strong assessment evidence. Now, this will apply obviously if you are an apprentice, if you're doing general learning within a marketing kind of role or content creator role. Obviously, that's going to be relevant to you, but it's also going to be relevant for every kind of marketer or business professional looking to develop a strong CV or portfolio. So this applies to all of us, myself included. I'm Neil Wilkins, and this is Cambridge Marketing College. So, creating a portfolio of work that for anybody who is learning will pass and impress. This is the key thing. I mean, you're doing the work, and now is the time to evidence it properly. So, in this session, we're going to have a look at how routine kind of marketing activity can be mapped, can be written up, and it can be structured to ensure that your assessment criteria are clearly and confidently met. That is the key. So we're going to go deep into the things that you can do with the work that you're doing to ensure that you get best returns. So many apprentices will potentially fail, not because of poor work, but of the poor way that they actually evidence that work. Assessors, obviously, if you think about it, can only judge what is clearly shown. And everyday marketing tasks may already contain some strong evidence. So the key is already, you don't need more work, you just need to explain it better and more effectively. So that's our key focus here as we drill down into the detail. Now, a lot of the common issues that apprentices particularly will face, but of course, as we said earlier, this will apply to all forms of learning and then evidencing and structuring the work that you're doing as a result of that learning, is that they will typically describe tasks, but not the competence. And if you stop and think about that, it's kind of just saying, this is what I've done, as opposed to, this is what I've done and the value that it's brought. So assuming assessors know what I mean is the key kind of question here. And of course they don't, because they won't have the context that you already know. We'll also find that they will overcomplicate, typically the write-ups, give too much superfluous information that's not really ticking the boxes from the assessor's perspective. So assessment is not about effort, it's about the demonstration, the clear demonstration of what's happened, why, and the impact that it's had. So there's going to be a pattern here that will evolve as we go through this. So what are assessors actually assessing? Well, typically they're looking for evidence against what we call the KSBs. So the knowledge, the skills, and the behaviors that will be critiquing whether you are a professional marketer or not. So they're looking also as well for real workplace activity. So not stuff that you've just shadowed or kind of seen in passing, but where you've made a contribution. So they're also looking for a clear understanding, and from that understanding, a reflection, not only on what happened, but what would I do differently next time? There is also a level of professional judgment that they're looking for here. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be super experienced or super strategic. It is at the level that you're working at, a way of being professional, critiquing what has happened, and even if it is just very subtle, saying what you would do differently to improve things next time. And of course, it is key to remember that they're not marking creativity or style. They're marking the detail behind those things. And that's actually what they're assessing when they look at the KSBs. So everyday work is valid evidence. It really is. I mean, emails that you created and wrote, social posts that you scheduled, reports you contributed to, maybe meetings you attended and contributed in, maybe feedback you acted upon. If it happened at work, it can usually be evidenced. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that it's absolutely everything. Of course, you are going to be creating a show reel, so the best of the best bits, and that isn't necessarily the best results in terms of tangible meeting goals and targets, but the best evidence that you contributed, that you added value, that you changed or improved something, that there was progress within a context. That is the stuff you need to be really laser focused on finding and evidencing. And of course, through a KSB, the knowledge, skills, and behaviors lens, and this is how your assessor is looking at the evidence you provide, the knowledge is what you understand, the skills are what you can do, The behaviors are how you work. And of course, if you think about it, strong evidence often covers all three at once. So you've understood what you're doing, you know you can do it, and you've demonstrated it, and the behavior is how you did it. So we're talking at the highest kind of level of professionalism here, not necessarily the highest level of seniority. That's a totally different conversation. But at every single level, we are able to evidence professionalism, the knowledge, skills, and behaviors coming together through the assessor's lens, the way they're looking at the evidence you provide, to give them confidence that, hey, this is a professional at work. That's what we're after here. And of course, it's very easy if you don't follow that mantra to fall into one of the most common evidence mistakes, which is I did task X. And this activity shows just activity, not competence. So better to say I did task X because of Y, which resulted in Z. So if you think about that, it's extending the thing. The thing is still the same, but you did it for a reason and it resulted in something that you then reflected on. So that's the extension that we're talking about. And this is why I'm saying most things could qualify if you feel that they're relevant enough. So bear that in mind when you're starting to gather the evidence and look for the things that tick the boxes of those KSBs. And from the assessor's perspective, this kind of KSB lens, the assessors are typically asking themselves when they're reading the stuff or looking at the evidence you provide, what was the task? What did you do? Why did you do it that way? What was the outcome? And what did you learn or improve? And so your evidence in each and every case should answer these things very, very clearly. What was the task? What did you do? Why did you do it that way? What was the outcome? And what did you learn or improve? And if you think about it, this is beginning to become a bit of a process. And we can call this the evidence conversion model. It's a thing. So we're moving from task into context, into decision, into outcome, and into a reflection. And so this kind of simple flow chart, if you like, it's a mind map. It's a process or a system that you can use to convert every piece of evidence into something really tangible that ticks all the boxes. And so it turns potentially everyday activity into assessment ready evidence. The task to context, to decision, to outcome, to reflection. And just take a couple of examples of things that you might have done recently or even today so far, and just put them through that and kind of understand that this is obviously acting and behaving anyway, even if you're not going to be assessed, behaving at the highest level because you're constantly and continuously improving everything you do in the context of wider goals of the organization, making confident professional decisions and knowing the specific, precise outcome of all of those things and reflecting and improving and getting better and better every time. So it's great practice, isn't it? If you stop and think about this, this is what we should all be doing with everything all the time. So let's go through this then sort of step by step. We've got a few steps here that we can work with here. So start with the task, step one. So describe briefly what the task or activity was, when it happened, and why it existed. This is the part in this first step that you can keep factual and concise. That's key. Step two then is explaining the situation or adding the context. So you can explain this situation, so the campaign, the objective, or the problem you were looking to solve, the audience, or maybe some stakeholders that were involved, and importantly, any constraints of resource, time, budget, tools, that kind of thing. And of course, the context to somebody who doesn't know your organization, your role, the things that you're doing, context demonstrates knowledge. It shows that you understand the why. So adding the context at step two, after you've explained or started with the task, is key. Step three then is showing your decision making. This is where most evidence really improves dramatically. So you can then demonstrate professional thinking by explaining why you chose one approach over another, how your knowledge informed your decision making, and any trade-offs that you considered. You know, we're always prioritizing. Assessors love prioritization. They love the evidence of, you're planning here. There was an option B, but you went with option A because. So this is the professional decision making that needs to come through. And sometimes it's in collaboration. Sometimes you're not making decisions alone because you're working with your line manager or maybe a wider team or colleagues or an agency or whoever. So if you can bring stakeholders into that decision making process, there could be some extra bonus points available there. Step four then is evidencing the outcome. Outcomes don't need to be perfect. As I say, they're not looking to rate whether or not this was the most amazing world-class campaign ever. They're not bothered by that. What they want to see is performance results, feedback from your manager or your team, completion of a deliverable that you've set, and importantly, as I keep saying and reminding you, improved process or learning. So those things are really key, evidencing the outcome, even if it's not the outcome you wanted. That probably, in lots of ways, doesn't matter. But if you're learning from that outcome, and particularly as we move into step five, reflecting properly, then you will have ticked the boxes. So, step five, reflecting properly. Good reflection answers show development and maturity in your professionalism. So, you can reflect on what worked well, what could be improved, and importantly, this is the big one, what you would do differently next time. Because if you're on this virtual hamster wheel of just doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome, expecting stuff to get better, but still doing the same thing, you're clearly not continuously improving. So that really is the icing on the cake of this model of strong evidence that you're providing. So the reflection at the end of it is absolutely key. Now, I'm often asked whether, one task could map to multiple KSBs or whether one KSB can map to multiple tasks. And the answer in both cases is yes and yes. So one task can evidence knowledge, why you did it, the skills, how you did it, the behaviors, how you worked. So don't split tasks unnecessarily. You can, if it's a good piece of evidence, you can evidence multiple KSBs. So an example could, for example, be a social media post. It could be that a single post can evidence knowledge of audience and tone of voice, the skill in content creation and scheduling, the behavior, maybe through feedback, deadlines, and collaboration. The value that you're providing here is in the explanation, not just the screenshot. So that's a nice, simple little example that just shows, how much value a single piece of evidence could have. A campaign support task, for example, another kind of piece of evidence. This could show planning awareness, the tools that you've chosen to use and how you coordinate and schedule with them, and maybe communication and professionalism. Even junior tasks matter when you explain them clearly. So no task is a small task if you can follow these rules. That's the key thing here. And as we're kind of seeing very clearly, hopefully, is that evidence should always include the work itself, so a file, a screenshot, a link, something, really significant that gives the tangible proof that, yeah, I did this. This actually was the thing that happened. A short written commentary, the narration, the storytelling, that little process that we talked about a little bit earlier, those 5 steps, and the clear dates and clarity of your role. That's important. We would always say that the number of times that you say I rather than we, because we cannot be evidence towards you because what percentage of the we was you, if you see what I mean. So you always need to be looking for the I in your evidence. And without this kind of commentary, the evidence is weak because it doesn't give somebody who's never seen this before a reason or an ability to actually assign credit to you. So you have to go through these kinds of processes. You have to give this kind of evidence. The work itself, short written commentary, and some clear dates and clarity of your role in the process, no matter at what level, no matter how much of contribution. If there's value that you've given, the evidence could qualify. And the converse of that, if you look at the other end of the spectrum, is that risky evidence would probably include things like certificates without any form of application of the knowledge of that course that you took. Work where your role is unclear. Again, it's that kind of smoke and mirrors. It's like, oh, yeah, I was part of a team that did this. Well, what does that tell about your contribution? Nothing really. Group work without explanation. Why was your role in that team relevant and valuable? So going deeper into the context of maybe some group work or a broader kind of project where you collaborated. I mean, collaboration is great as long as you're super clear, because that's stakeholder engagement, which again is another thing that comes into the KSBs. And of course, another piece of very risky evidence is hypothetical examples. And the one kind of grey area that often crops up here is shadowing. I shadowed this person on this particular project or campaign. I'm going to include that. Well, shadowing without evidence of what you did is not going to count. So if you do shadow, then you need to take an opportunity to produce something that was tangibly yours. Always clarify your contribution to be able to score these marks. And so, a writing style as well, as we talk about this kind of commentary or narration or storytelling, use first person. I did this. I was there when. Plain English, short paragraphs, and professional tone. I mean, avoid where you can any acronyms, any kind of metaphors, avoid jargon, and also over formal writing. Make this personal. This is part of your experience. You're evidencing your knowledge, skills, and behaviors. So it's a balance between professional but not over formal, if you see what I mean. There's this kind of nice natural balance where it's your story that you're telling, and that's great. So don't over formalize it, don't overcomplicate it. And in lots of cases, lots of ways, less is more. So, how much evidence is actually enough? Well, quality does matter more than quantity. An assessor is, they're going to be pushed for time, much as we all are. So, they will prefer fewer but better or well explained examples. They're going to look for evidence across time. They don't want to see everything loaded into maybe a week's activities and then, but what happened for the rest of the program? What happened in the rest of the project? So they want to see a nice balance. And also, what is really, really positive here is increasing responsibility so that as you're doing reflections, as you're comparing before with after, as you're doing A versus B, showing that you're taking increasing responsibility, you're going deeper into your decision making. Those kinds of things can be really key, and they can really give the assessor that sort of confidence, if you like, that you are doing a great job and you're progressing. That's really important. So, a simple evidence checklist. So, before submitting, if you just take every piece of evidence that you want to put forward through this little checklist, this will protect you. So, before submitting, check, is the task clear? Is my role obvious? Have I explained why I did it? Is there a clear outcome? And where is my reflection? And if yes to all of these things, then your evidence is usually as strong as it could possibly be. So be really clear with yourself. Don't try and cut corners here. You have to tick these boxes in this checklist with every piece of evidence you submit. And it's a great habit, isn't it? You just sort of think about this. Take just a moment to think about how this is going to really help in terms of building a good professional habit with all of your work, way beyond the point of assessment. Best practice is writing evidence little and often, getting to the habit of doing this. It's great for your CV in the long term. Capture context as well whilst it's fresh in your mind, because those little details, if you come back to it a week, a month, or even 6 months later, you will not remember how you felt at that time. And of course, if you're doing a reflection, do it in the moment. How does this feel to me now, right here in the moment? And link, obviously, evidence to the KSBs as early as you can. There's no point in just putting all this stuff into a big pot and thinking, oh, well, I'll sift through that later, because you will miss the stuff that is there, relevant, front of mind right now. So build this really as a habit. And maybe, it would be a nice idea, you don't have to do it monthly, but reviewing this monthly, having a look through all of your pot of assessment criteria and all of your evidence, and maybe just reviewing it, well, let's just say regularly. Ideally monthly, I guess, but on a regular basis, because this is going to reduce any kind of stress levels near the assessment, because you've got this, you really have. And by building this over a period of time, it'll give you and the assessor confidence that, hey, this was a program, this was a story, and yeah, I've done this and I've improved this continually as I've gone. So, what does pass versus strong pass look like? I mean, if you follow these rules, you will be at least passing, but a strong pass for those who really want to get a good grade up to and beyond distinction. I mean, a pass will meet the KSBs clearly. It will, because those are the knowledge, skills, and behaviors that are being assessed. But a strong pass, something that gets a merit or a distinction or just that kind of wow factor of, look, I did really well here. A strong pass will show judgment, reflection, and confidence with clarity. It'll demonstrate learning over time, and it will have made the assessor's job easy. So, clarity of the things that we're talking about here will impress. So, how you market or present this stuff to the assessor is absolutely key. You're a marketer, you're a content creator, you're going to want to impress. It's what we do. So, therefore, think of this as marketing to the assessor using these criteria and using this kind of process. And to round off, you're already doing assessment worthy work. I know it, you know it. So your task is to make this visible, structured, and understandable. So it isn't about proving how busy you are. Everybody's busy. This is all about showing how capable you are with the knowledge, the skills, and the behaviors that are part of your assessment evidence.